Hello, welcome to the P.S.F.L podcast. Joining me today is the commissioner of the P2P and the 49ers GM, Yeti. Yeti, how are you doing today?
Oh, I've had better days. I just lost a Super Bowl in P2P, but we're hanging in there. Excited to be here on the podcast and talk about this exciting league and where it's headed, and my team that's looking pretty good. So hopefully we can get a Super Bowl win here because we can't seem to get one in my own league.
Well, that was a pretty crazy game, and anybody who's listening who's not involved in the P2P should definitely check it out. It's an awesome league.
Yeah. If you're not familiar, I'll just talk about it for a second. The whole premise: we run a college league, and all the players go on to play in the professional league. So we do all the drafts with players generated out of college. We've been doing it since the 2010 season, and both leagues are in 2011 now. So we're pretty in the pro league, pretty much all fictional players at this point from the college league. But it's a lot of fun playing with your college players, and in fact, it's pretty much what I've always wanted from these types of games, is to be able to carry on and play with your favorite players into pro seasons and get them into the Hall of Fame kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun, and I run that league. So we do have open teams in both sides. So if you're looking for another extra challenge, just come check out the Discord, and we'll get you signed up.
All right. Well, now we should talk a little bit about what we have going on today. So on the screen, we have the Week 6 power rankings that were put together by Zach. He does these really awesome power rankings periodically where he shows where he thinks each team will be and then writes a little bit of information about them. And we're going to talk about those today and how the P.S.F.L is shaping up. So should we start with the title favorites then in the top category?
Yeah, let's start with that top thing. I think that's what everyone's here to hear about, is these top teams and some of the contenders as well. And things can change over the season, so it looks like it in week 6, but that could change and come more into focus as we get to week 16.
There have been some surprise teams. Like I put the Packers on there for sure, but I suppose we should start with the Cowboys since they're at the top of the list. How are you feeling about the Cowboys?
I mean, they've got an impeccable offense, but I don't know, based on what I'm seeing the last 3 games, 38-33 at home, but then the offense isn't able to put points on the board really these last 2 games. And so maybe that's demonstrating some chinks in the armor for the Cowboys. So it's going to be all about adjustments, I think, for the Cowboys. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against Carolina. Carolina's a tough game. And if they come out and keep doing this offensively, that'll be good. But, their defense is showing that they're really good, but the point totals are leading me to believe that they might be a little bit more of a paper tiger than we might think. But this Carolina game will really be the tail of the tape because Carolina is a bit of a tougher team than they faced so far. That Giants win was a good one, but it's at home. And so tough to say. I think they're a good team. They're at the top of the power rankings for a reason, but I think they're going to need to make some adjustments because you do not want 3 of your victories to be by 7 total points if you're going to be that good of a team. So they're playing in some close games. They definitely need to, especially against teams that they should be head and shoulders better than, they need to get some bigger victories, in my opinion. And so those last couple games have left me a little bit temperamental on considering them my favorite to win the Super Bowl. But it's a long season, and we'll see how they adjust as they go back home against Carolina.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. They went out and made that trade for Saquon Barkley for Ezekiel Elliott, which I think I cleared up some cap for them and maybe it was kind of a lateral move at running back, uh, but definitely showed that they're in it to win it this year. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the big story for them statistically has been a huge advantage in yards over their opponent. Their yardage differential is pretty crazy, even in these close games. Like I think the Falcons game is the best. I mean, they had 515 total yards. The Falcons only put up 242.
And what's crazy is they put up that much yardage and they were trailing 21-10 in the fourth quarter. That's crazy to me. So they had to play a comeback, but looking what they did in that comeback win, I mean, that does give some indication that they've got the mettle to do it and play in tight games and play from behind. But it is interesting that despite the disparity in yardage, almost 300 yards more than Atlanta, and they still were trailing 21-10 late in the game. So that might indicate that the red zone offense needs to improve.
Yeah, I think you're right. And another thing to look at here is on the defensive side, they're ranked pretty well on these like raw game provided stats here, but they haven't played against any offensive powerhouses like the Panthers, so that'll be a big test for them. And the other thing is, while their rushing offense looks incredible on paper, they haven't been run against very much. So there's a question mark as to whether that's like a realistic number or whether I think that'll probably kind of move down to the mean pretty quickly here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Especially
once
when you
they get up against Carolina. Yeah, once they get up against Carolina. Carolina's got a stellar defense, but I do think Dallas's defense is pretty good, but you do wonder if it's exactly like you said, they're going to head toward the mean. It's more just they haven't faced good running teams so far, or teams that even try to run all that much. So maybe as the teams start to run against them, they'll dip a bit.
Yeah, they actually have been run against the least of any team in the league so far.
Yeah, so that could be an indicator of their top ranked rush defense. But that's, if I was Carolina, that's kind of what I'd be thinking about in their game coming up is maybe I try to run the ball a little bit and test this Dallas team out because nobody's done it yet.
All right, so we've talked a pretty fair amount about the Cowboys here. So let's move on to your team.
Oh boy. Well,
number 2 there on the ranks.
Well, I think we've looked great the last couple weeks. We had that really strange game that came. I mean, I almost don't count it because it came off that strange sim where it was like the whole season got simmed or whatever. And the disparity of the games was so crazy that I was just like, okay, I'm just going to ignore this week. But I think we've looked good. We showed some mettle. Playing on the road in Green Bay was tough. Aaron Rodgers, we were able to stop him. He's one of the top quarterbacks. Kyler Murray didn't have a great game against us either. And so that's indicating to me that, maybe this pass defense that I still tread lightly on because I'm like, we don't have tons of talent at the corner position. And we've got an undersized strong safety and a young free safety. So everybody's young in that whole entire secondary. And it's gave me some trepidation, but playing against two top quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers and being able to maintain that good pass defense, maybe I can start being more confident in it. But we'll see. This week's going to be tough. Your offense, I think, is going to be tough trying to plan for Cook. And so maybe we go down the rankings this week, but we are at home, which I think really, really helps us. We've got to improve on third down. Obviously, we haven't been great, only 25% or so, but it really hasn't mattered.
Well, and you had that game against the Packers where you didn't convert even one. I think that kind of skews it.
It was like
a weird game.
0 for 6 or whatever we were in that game. It was very strange.
Yeah. The Packers have been a weird team playing tough opponents well. But talk about your pass defense. Even though we've kind of got a few more games under our belt now, you're allowing 49.13% completions.
Yeah.
I mean, impossible to complete a pass against, basically.
Yeah.
25% of passes are getting PD'd.
Yeah. That's yeah, I've been surprised, especially with Valentin, the rookie. His intelligence is low, but he's got good instincts, I guess, because he's defended a lot of passes. He leads our whole team. He had 6 in one game, and that kind of solidified him as our main corner. Um, oh, hey, hold on one sec. I got to plug in my battery's not charging for some reason. 1 second before my computer just dies and I go kaput. So I'll let you talk for just a second. Give me like 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So one of the things that sticks out to me about the 49ers pass defense is if you look at their yards allowed per pass completed, it's about league average. They're allowed about 12 and a half yards per pass complete. But their yards per pass attempt, one of the lowest in the league. So really, this pass defense isn't so much about containing and limiting yak. This pass defense is all about limiting completions, and they've done that at a rate that I can't think of a team that I've seen limit completions like this in any league. So it's one of the things that really sticks out about this 49ers team besides the just high-powered offense. In my statistical ranking, I have their offense ranked at number 2, right behind another team we're going to talk about here in a second, the Bengals. And they've slowly become a little bit better on the run. I think one of the more eye-popping stats about them is they're actually really not tearing off a lot of big runs. They're below the league average in big running plays. But if you look at their passing plays and the big plays per drive, they're right in the top of the league. 66% of their drives include a pass play for 20 yards or more. So that's pretty significant. And while they haven't been one of the most efficient teams drive by drive, they have been putting up a ton of points. They're averaging 37 points a game right now, which is terrifying, I guess would be the best way to put that, as someone who's about to play against them. And they played against some pretty solid competition. The Lions, who we'll talk about later, have an excellent GM. And while the team isn't necessarily where I'm sure that Stewart wants it to be, his coaching is still there. And so putting up 41 points against the Stewart team is not easy. And then also the Packers, who have had a pretty interesting season of competing against some high-powered teams. They beat the Bears recently, who I think are really good. They beat me, which I'm not very happy about, obviously, in overtime. So the 49ers have faced some tests, and I think that I would put them at the top of that list. So if I was doing the power rankings, I hate to disagree with Zach, but I would probably put the 49ers at the 1 spot. All right, it looks like Yeti's computer did die, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the Bengals here. So the Bengals are one of my favorite teams in the league. GM Santoro, newer to the league, newer to this community, but has done just an incredible job with his team. And they have what I think, at least right now, is the best offense in our entire league. They have been incredible, averaging the league high of 41 points a game. They have the highest rate of successful drives. One of my newer stats. So what that is it's looking at the number of drives that are either a touchdown or have a field goal attempt. So the number of drives that have a legitimate scoring opportunity in them. And he also has, I believe, the highest rate of touchdowns per drive. So really efficient offense, not missing opportunities, scoring when they have the opportunity. And they also have a 50% third down conversion rate, which is by far the highest in the league. So they are moving the ball when they want to. And that is scary. And their defense isn't a slouch either. We can take a look at that. Yeah, I have them as the number 9 ranked defense in the league right now. So that is pretty serious. I think that you might make an argument for them being right there with the Cowboys at that 2 spot for the league, possibly even at number 2, Cowboys at 3. So The Steelers, who have been a computer-controlled team since I think Week 1, have actually played pretty well, and this 44-10 blowout is more of an achievement than you might expect for an AI team victory. The Chargers are a really good team this year. I think they could possibly win their division. And the Bengals took them to town. That loss against the Ravens, though, pretty serious game between two very good GMs and very good teams. And the Bengals box score looks like they should have won that game. So I really think that this is a team where we're talking about the Cowboys maybe being a less tested option at the top of these power rankings. I think you could say these Bengals have faced some competition. Hey, welcome back, Eddie. You still got your camera on, by the way.
Oh, I'll turn that off. Yeah, well, my computer just blew up because I didn't have it plugged in and didn't realize until it was like blinking at me, and then it just shut off. So I had to reboot everything. But I'm back. So sorry for leaving you hanging there.
Oh, no problem. I moved on to the Bengals there. So, do you have any thoughts on them?
Bengals look really good. Do you have their dashboard pulled up on the game?
Yeah, I can pull it up right now. Oh, I had the Ravens. There they are.
Yeah,
First
so
basically every offensive category.
Bengals have looked really good. They're blowing teams out. I mean, they weren't able to win on the road at Baltimore, which is concerning, but I think was that the same week, that weird sim? Because I feel like so many games just went like the complete opposite way on the new sim. It's like the unfavored teams won a bunch. So week 3 against Baltimore, that might be that same week that like we lost to Chicago. That was the weird anomaly week. Outside of that, though, offense and defenses look good. 51-3, 44-10, but that offense really does look excellent and like it can win a championship. Really balanced with Mixon and Burrow. Burrow has been great touchdown to interception efficiency. Not quite as good as Trey Lance at 18-1, but still looks great. Efficient passing, 67%. I mean, can't ask for much more. Limiting sacks as well, because I think that's the knock on Lance is he's got I think he's been sacked 17 times in 5 games, and so only 9 games there for Burrow, or 9 sacks on Burrow. So that's kind of the difference. And this team looks great. I would consider this team in my top 2 of Super Bowl contenders.
That's actually what I had just said, was that I would maybe put you at number 1 and then slide the Cowboys to 3 and put the Bengals at 2 there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to look at it. I wouldn't underestimate the Titans either. They've got so much talent, and once Drummer is able to get everything slid in there and adjusted, I mean, by the time playoffs come around, Titans are going to be a very, very hard team to beat.
And the Panthers, who are up next on our power ranking list, have looked very good as well.
Yeah, so Carolina's looking good as well. I think we're gonna see. We're really gonna find out this week. This is a potential preview of NFC Championship or NFC playoff matchup somewhere. Dallas and Carolina. Their offenses look decent. They're great on defense. Limiting the pass. So they've moved. San Francisco was number 1 against the pass for a while, but then after that, I mean, Kyler Murray and Arizona threw like 60 times against us to get to 300 yards. But good pass defense from the Panthers, and that's going to be clutch because it does seem like this league is skewing toward being a passing league. So that might indicate that you really do need to do well against stopping the pass if you hope to go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting with the pass heaviness of this league because I think like if you look at the overall stats in the league so far, it does seem pretty pass heavy. But a lot of these top teams have high quality running backs and do run the ball, move the ball on the ground a lot more. And the Panthers are probably at the top of that list.
That's right. Yeah, they do a good job. Balanced offense for them as well. Christian McCaffrey, great running back. They might want to see his average push up just a little bit, but they're getting him working out of the backfield too. He's already got half the yardage he got last season in only 8 catches, and it took him like 49 catches to get to 333. So he's averaging 19.2. So they've really got him working in the passing game in a new way, and he's running the ball well too. So no fumbles either. So that's going to be key, I think. I do think that the teams that do have a balanced running attack as we get into the playoffs, being able to switch on the fly is going to be important, in my opinion. So having a back like that, kind of like how, they've also got the rookie Robert Stanley. If he can stay healthy, then they're going to be solid. He's going to have some growing pains a little bit, as all rookies do anyway, but that's a franchise quarterback. And to pair that with Christian McCaffrey, I mean, that just looks like a really, really difficult team to beat. And there's a reason they're 5-0. I might even slate these guys because San Francisco's, we've ran the ball pretty well, but I would consider this offense a little more balanced than ours and having more success with it. We've had some trouble getting our running game going in the way that we'd like, which as we get through a season, if we end up being one-dimensional, that it's only going to get harder and harder to pass. So I really like this team a lot. Carolina, I do think Carolina is going to beat Dallas this week, and probably move themselves up to number 1 on the power rankings. But we do have, that what in your eyes, San Francisco number 1, Minnesota number 6 on the power rankings as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these two games shift the rankings for next week.
Yeah, I think the big concern with Carolina going forward at the beginning of the season was their defense, and particularly their front 7 just didn't look very good on paper. But they have, at least so far, thwarted that narrative, as Toasty was very happy to point out in the chat the other day.
Yeah, I mean, they have done well. That's the same as, like our secondary in San Francisco looked weak, and it's performed well. And on paper, their defensive front has looked weak, and it's performed well. They do have, some nice corners in Boy and Jackson, which really helps to take some pressure off of the line. But yeah, they've got the talent to stop the pass. I mean, Boy might be a little bit slow, but they've got speed elsewhere. Safety position, that might be a consideration. Slow at strong safety, so that might be a point of attack for some of these higher powered passing teams like Dallas. So that'll come up in this Dallas game, I think. Carolina's strong safeties, their speed there, because Dak and Dallas likes to air it out. So if they're not able to stop them with those slower safeties that Carolina has, I think that would be the big weakness and would tilt the game in their favor. But I think Carolina's too balanced to lose that game at home.
Yeah, there's a couple games that are a really big test of this top half of the power rankings this week, and that's probably the most interesting of them. I agree. I think Carolina will probably win this game. They both played the Giants, and the Cowboys won in a close game. The Panthers basically blew out the Giants, so that's the closest gauge we have.
Yep, closest gauge. Can't go too far with the transitive property, but that is, in these kind of games, I think it's a little bit of a decent indicator. But we'll see if the Cowboys, after that close win last week, what kind of adjustments they make this week for Carolina.
All right, and now we're on to my Minnesota Vikings, who are way too high up these power rankings, I think. I certainly
I
don't think
mean,
we're above Tennessee.
yeah, Tennessee's got 2 losses though, and so it really is just a matter of that. I think at this point, I think Tennessee would probably, if they hadn't lost that second game, would probably be talking about them closer to the top of the rankings because they've just got so much talent. But I'm confident, once Drummer gets time to sit down and get all that done, that Titans are going to be a very, very difficult team to stop. But Josh's teams are, I think he's maybe one of my most faced GMs. He and I have been battling it out in the college sim for a number of seasons now. So always a tough matchup once he gets his team dialed in. Now, your team, I've been scared of Dalvin Cook. Especially because teams have ran well against San Francisco. So we're looking at Dalvin Cook this week and just thinking we got to stop this guy. And I think he's the main key to your whole team.
Oh, I mean, we'll see. He's definitely my most standout offensive player. But so I obviously can't be too objective about this, but I already said I don't really think that my team probably is in the same category as the teams in this title favorites. Would you agree with that? Who would you just move us down a rank? Would you put somebody else up?
No, I mean I think I like where the rankings are at. You only have 1 loss. You've played well. I see plenty of stuff that indicate to me. I mean, I'm worried about this game. I'm more worried about this game than probably like even the Chicago game. I wasn't too worried about that. So I've put in work because I'm looking at your team and I just scouted film and I think you're at a decent place. While you're not blowing teams out, you're getting wins. And I see enough that indicates to me that Minnesota's there. Between the others, I mean, maybe Green Bay, if they could. I mean, Green Bay did just get a nice win, but I don't know. I'd say it's a pretty decent spot. You are low ranked in both offense and defense. Ninth compared to the other teams that are in the top 6 or so there. Your offensive rank and defensive rank is a little bit lower. You don't have a top 5 in either category, but that could bode well. I mean, so long as you keep winning games. I think this week will really be the barometer for your team. I mean, if you get blown out against San Francisco, then obviously you don't belong there at number 5 on the power rankings. But if it's a close game or you manage to win, obviously it'll demonstrate that that's right where you belong.
All right. So should we move on to the Titans then? We already touched on them a little bit, but they're in an interesting spot and a little unique for Drummer's teams, I'd say.
I think it's just a matter of time. I think he'll get to where, like I said, sometimes his teams are a little bit slower. I've noticed that even in college. Sometimes he just doesn't have time to get everything all dialed in right at the beginning of seasons. But he always gets those small adjustments done throughout the seasons. He's got some tough games coming up, so it'll be a real indicator. They're at Buffalo this week, then a bye, then at the Bengals. So if he's gonna get stuff installed, now's the time to do it, because I do think even though Jedi's been hating on himself with the Bills, I do think they're a pretty good team as well. So as long as he kind of sticks with what he's doing, I think the Bills will be all right as well. They got Josh Allen, talented squad. So it really depends on what kind of adjustments get installed this week for the Titans as they go to Buffalo. But three sims now to get everything installed, because you don't want to go to 4 losses by week 8. Being at 3-4 would be a tough spot for playoff positioning. But we do have that extra game in the season with 17 games. So, perhaps not too worried about the early season, but it'll come down to tiebreakers if you start losing to Buffalo and Cincinnati for playoff seeding. and so that's got to be an important game.
Yeah, and the big question mark with this Titans team, surprisingly enough, is the defense. I mean, 12th in points per game right now. They haven't looked very sharp against the run or the pass compared to what you'd expect from Drummer so far. And like you said, it could be the dialing in. That Bengals game will and the Bills game will really show you if that pass defense is going to kind of stay in the middle of the league or if he's going to get it sorted out, which will be
Yeah,
important for the playoffs.
definitely will be important. So, yeah, I mean, I have no doubts, and maybe Titans are ranked here because if you looked at the Titans number now and didn't associate it with a particular GM, I mean, they haven't looked good. They're lower ranked in all the categories than your team, and they're 3-2, and so you probably wouldn't place him here if it wasn't for Drummer. And so we're assuming that he's going to make the adjustments, but maybe this is what the defense looks like. But big part of me says doubt that and get ready. But they do have some speed issues, maybe at strong safety. But Titans have so much talent; they'll figure it out, and they're going to win a lot of games once they do.
Yeah, and they have Derrick Henry averaging 6.1 yards per carry right now, so basically just run the ball all the way home.
And there's a number you're used to seeing with Drummer offenses, like a average yards per rush being like 1.5 yards ahead of most of the other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's very happy to have Derrick Henry, but even if he had another running back, I think it'd still be a top rushing team. And he is the number one rushing team right now.
Yeah, and then you've got Russell Wilson as well. So opening it up and getting him working with both players, I think will balance that offense back. I'd be scared to face him right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and so moving on from the title favorites category, this is where it maybe gets a little more interesting. We have a lot of teams that I actually really like in these strong title contenders and playoff contention category. The Patriots have really been a shock. I haven't paid too much attention to what the Dolphins are doing, but obviously let's take a look here. It's nice not to have to worry about the Dolphins in a league.
Yeah, right. Well, I didn't have to this year, and I was like actually all excited because Vegas won, and then they just destroyed us. But yeah, Dolphins, the offense, still has some work to do. They're playing in close games. They did beat Tennessee in week 2 by a touchdown, but all of their games have been one-score games. And so that's makes it really hard to get a full read because they could just as easily be 0-5 as they could be 5-0 or 4-1. But they do have the mettle to finish it out, and wins are what counts. But the offense is going to need to improve for sure. Defense has been stellar, and that's keeping them in the games. Obviously, why it's one-score games. So they're getting the stops they need to. Tua is playing all right. He could be maybe a little more efficient. 3 interceptions to 7 touchdowns and only 55% passing. So you want to see that number tick up. And I think as it does, you'll see the offense improve significantly if they can get that efficiency figured out from the quarterback position. Myles Gaskin's not too bad in the run game. I mean, obviously, they don't have much obviously behind him running the ball. So they want to try and maybe get him the ball a little more often. It seems like they're passing a little bit heavy, but Dolphins will be an interesting team. Their defense will keep them in it, and defense wins championships, as they say. So,
yeah, and this might be another case of an experienced GM boosting his team up the power ranks a little bit here. Dolphins GM, I think you say it, Mplep. Is that? Do you know how to say
Mplep?
it?
That's how I pronounce it, is Mplep.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
He's another very good GM with a lot of experience, so he can probably sort out his team.
Got some good Dolphins teams going. So I imagine it'll happen here, but the difference in P2P is he's got a lot. He's built a very talented squad there, and this squad might not be quite as talented as what he's used to. But that's what I always say. Anytime I take over a team, it's like give yourself a 3-year buffer. Don't expect to come in and win and get really disappointed when you don't. Like with San Francisco, even if I don't win this year or next year, or if I miss the playoffs, it's just, give yourself a 3-year window and get the pieces you need to do what you want to do. And I'm confident Dolphins will do that. They'll definitely improve as the season goes on, but other teams will as well.
Yeah, and so I guess now we should move along to the Ravens, who have been an interesting team. Eddie Potato, their GM, has put together some really good teams in the past in some other leagues, and I think that for the Ravens, who have such a talented roster, it's just been they've had a lot of weird luck. Obviously, you can see Matt Ryan is their leading passer, which obviously is not their plan. They've had a lot of injury issues with Jackson, and they've played in some close games and just not come out on top of them.
Yeah, so they're on the other side of that kind of Dolphins were winning 1-score games. They're losing 1-score games. I mean, their 3 losses are by combined 9 points. Their 2 wins have been blowouts, so it's just a matter of, probably getting those injury issues figured out. Getting some consistency at quarterback will really help a lot. So with Jackson back, maybe we'll start seeing what this team is really about. But they've got some nice wins in the process, even though they have some rough losses as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the losses that they've had so far. A fun little stat about the Ravens, probably not a huge contributor to their win-loss record so much, is how much luck they've had in penalties. Both the Patriots and the Ravens have had extremely advantageous ref results so far. They've gained 129 yards over their teams in penalties so far this season.
Wow. That's an interesting
Well ahead
stat.
Yeah. Patriots are in that same category. Both teams that maybe need a little bit of the help given issues with their offense this season.
Well, and that those numbers are going to trend toward the mean. So, they're not going to keep that advantage forever. But interesting home cooking. I wonder where these teams rank in terms of like bandwagon fans and stuff like that. Because sometimes I wonder if those metrics play a role.
There's a lot of mysteries in the world of draft day sports.
That is the truth.
But this defense is good. And I think that this defense is good enough that they'll finish with a positive win-loss record to be over 500 by the end of the season. But we'll see on that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, getting Jackson working, not having Matt Ryan as your number 1 quarterback, I think will help that team turn some of those into losses. And we'd be discussing them different if they scored, 10 more points.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so even though the record's 2-3, I think this is probably a reasonable spot for them in the power rankings right now. And so
yeah, I'd agree. I'd probably slate the Patriots and the Packers. I mean, but I'm also a little biased having faced the Packers. That was a tough game for us that we had to score a touchdown late to win that game. So I think Packers. I'd probably flip Baltimore and the Packers, but that's just me. And I do think the Bills belong up there as well.
Yeah, the Packers beat me in overtime in a crazy game. So they're tougher than it seems like they would be. I was really down on the Packers going into the season, but I'm also a Vikings fan and heavily biased. So there we go. Patriots time. The other team, the team that's benefited the most from penalties, actually, kind of weirdly right next to each other in the power rankings here. All right, I'll pull them up on the dashboard. What do you think about the Patriots?
I think they're an interesting team. They're, I think they're going to trend a little bit more toward the mean as the season goes on, as they face more tough teams. But they have beat the Titans, they've beat the Bills. Those are good wins,
They played the Colts close.
especially. But they've also played 4 games at home, and that's kind of what I was wondering when they were getting, the penalty yardage disparity. Yeah, they've played at home, so they get some home cooking. But they do have nice wins, beating the Titans 34-12, beating one of Josh's teams, no matter when it happens, is that's no small accomplishment. So that Titans win and the Bills win are good victories for that squad. But we're really going to see what happens as they go onto the road. Once they start playing some road games, because they've lost the only one they played, and they got stomped in the preseason. That's not much of an indicator by the Browns, 45-6 on the road. But they've got 2 games on the road at Miami. That's a big game. That'll tell us a lot about both teams coming up in week 7, and then at Denver. And I'm kind of thinking they're not going to play the same way as they play in New England.
Yeah, and there's some interesting oddities in their stats. Even just looking at the key stats on the dashboard, they're first in points per game, but their yard stats really don't reflect that. So you have to think they'll start giving up more points. They're 10th in points gained, and their offense isn't good.
Yeah. How is this team 4-1 when they've allowed 50 more yards on defense than they're putting up on offense? I mean, that can't last. That indicates to me that they're probably going to start trending more towards the mean and getting some losses when they start facing some adversity and they don't get that penalty favoritism, because that really does, the more we've looked at this team, seem to be a pretty big factor in why this team is 4-1.
Yeah, and their yardage differential, I mean, they've allowed 220 more yards than they've gained. So, if you sort by yard differential, you generally have your good teams tend to have positive yardage differentials, obviously, and it's pretty close to a power ranking there. So,
and that's where so I see that number with the Bills. I know Jedi's been in the forums, kind of poo-pooing himself and saying how this team sucks and blah 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 blah, but there's exactly as you indicated, the yardage disparity. Bills are up there with the top 5 teams, just below San Francisco in terms of the yardage disparity. So Bills definitely belong up there by this indication, especially over perhaps a few of these other teams.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we have like a kind of 2 opposite things happening here. I think the Patriots are going to regress and fall down the power rankings probably, and I think the Bills are going to move up.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Both teams have had just weird luck. Patriots have had kind of good luck in strange ways, and the Bills have kind of had the opposite thing going on.
Yep.
So should we take a quick look at the Packers then, who are kind of the surprise of the season? Because I didn't see them having any tools for Rodgers, but apparently Rodgers doesn't need tools.
Oh man, when I looked at that team, so they've got young receivers, so they might have low overall in the receiver department, but they've got some talent there, and it's showing through. I mean, I think as this talent develops and gets better, it's going to be better for Rodgers, but they do have a couple receivers that I think are really pretty talented. I mean, you look at, they've got Harold Reed. He's a rookie, but speed 83, hands 91, agility 88. His strength is low, but that's a decent player if you can get him into space. I mean, strength's not going to matter as much if he's able to get out and beat his receivers on cut routes and stuff. So you wouldn't put him, on any sort of physical routes where he's going to have to fight with the corner, but you get him on some slants or cut ins and cut outs, and he's gonna catch the ball, and he's done so. And so I think he's pretty talented, even though he's young. He will only get better. And then who else do they got there? They've got a couple other guys that are.
Got AJ Green they picked up.
Yeah, so I mean AJ Green's slow. Scatling. I mean, that's another good player.
They've got Bird
strength's
here.
decent enough. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So they've got talent. He's small and not very strong. So I like Marquez, whatever the long 3-name guy.
Valdez Scantling, yeah.
Yeah.
That 77 agility is a little low, but not the end of the world.
No, well, it depends on what you're playing. I mean, if you're getting him over the top, his 87 speed, I would use this player all day, especially with that size. So he's 6'4", 206, compared to Bird, who's 5'9", 175, and not very strong. That would put Valdez Scatling at a higher level for me, and I think he's played pretty well. He's got that top level speed, so you can get him on those longer routes where agility doesn't matter quite as much.
Their defense has been getting lit up though this year, so that's pretty concerning.
Well,
21st against the pass.
Well, they also had to play who? Bears, San Francisco, Vikings. So these, San Francisco's a good offense. Bears, they had a good offense when they faced us as well. I mean, even if it was just Joe Flacco, they did well. But Bears gained well against them. Vikings gained well against them. But those are offenses. I look at Minnesota's offense and with the balance and the talent that's there, it's hard to game plan for. And so they faced some top offenses and done pretty well, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. They're better than I thought they'd be. So I will freely admit that I was wrong when I made my preseason predictions.
Nice.
So onto the playoff contention bubble teams here. So these are some pretty interesting teams. The Colts, I really like the Colts. I think that they're going to do well this year, and they've been running all over everybody. But I guess we'll start with the Chargers, and I'll pull up their dashboard here. What are your thoughts on the Chargers?
Chargers are another interesting, they've got an offense that looks pretty good. It's heavily skewed toward the pass, which so far seems to be working for them. But they're another team that's behind the 8-ball in terms of, they're giving up more yards than gaining. But, the Bengals really destroying them 51-3 might have a big part of that. But that's really concerning. And getting beat that badly against a Super Bowl team, that does make me wonder a little bit about the playoff contention, because they just really got utterly lit up, 591 yards, and they gave up 500 yards passing, which is just insane. So they're going to need to clean some things up. Herbert was inefficient against a good defense as well in the Bengals, so there's some indications against good teams that make me worried. Getting blown out like that, you just never want to see that if you're a playoff contender. And they also lost to the Raiders, who are another playoff contender in the same division. So that makes me think that they're probably on the outside looking in my opinion, in terms of playoffs, unless they really can go on a streak and figure some things out. The Raiders are a decent team as well, and they don't want to be behind on the tiebreaker against that team, because I think from the AFC West, you're going to need to win the division to get in. And I'm not sure that if you don't, I don't think there's going to be a wild card team from this division.
Yeah, I mean, they have a bye week this week, so and I think it's a newer GM, so maybe taking the bye week to clean up the defense a little bit, work a little on consistency. I think they have time to trim things up and maybe be on that playoff bubble.
Yeah,
Uh,
they've won their 2 games at home, so that's a good sign as well. Win your home games. They've gotten 1 road game already, so that would, if you can win all your home games, you end up 9-7 if you win 1 road game. So we'll see with the Chargers.
all right, so let's take a quick look at the Bears here. Should probably get moving along because we're bumping up on our hour here fast.
Yeah, we are.
Too many fun teams to talk about.
Yeah, I know. Well, Bears, I mean, my thoughts, they beat my team, but they haven't been quite as good since. They did beat Detroit as well. Scarecrow, I mean, he's somebody that I think he's fairly new. He's a newer GM, but he's been coming a long way. He's asked me a lot of questions over time, so I'm confident he will get things figured out. His offense looks okay, but it's been a weird season. I mean, beating San Francisco at San Francisco 23-6. That's a good win, but then, you lose to the Rams and you lose at the Packers, and that's divisional game, and you don't want to lose those. I would have been happier beating Green Bay and losing to the 49ers. Just because they don't have the division implications in the same way in terms of tiebreakers. But I like this team just because they beat my team. So,
well, can't argue with that logic. Yeah, I think the surprise for me has maybe been that their offense has seemed a little bit sleepy. I expected a little bit more from their offense. They have some playmakers on that squad.
Yeah, but they've had to rely on Flacco as the quarterback for most of the time. So Fields has been hurt for most of the season. So I think that's really going to change once you can go with Fields instead of Flacco. I mean, if you look at Fields has a very, very similar skill set to Trey Lance, and you see what we're doing with Trey Lance. So in fact, in terms of, well, his intelligence is different. I had read that wrong, but Trey Lance, he's got a better arm. Trey Lance is smarter, but I think you could get Fields working like this pretty well. So the game rates Fields a little higher. His intelligence might be a little low, but he's got that big arm, and his accuracy's good. So that 89, 85, and his intelligence will come up. I think he should really help this offense. He's been very inefficient, 18 of 38 in the spots he's had, but you've got to wonder how much of that has had to do with injury, because he has been battling injury so far this season the whole time. So I think he will trend upward toward the mean as he gets healthy. They do have good receivers. So Chicago, I think, will start going on a run as they stabilize with their quarterback.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was really high on this team to start the season, and I still am. I think that maybe next year they'll be the division winner. I think this division will be really open next year. I mean, Cousins is going to retire, and the Lions still have time to figure things out. Rodgers could be gone. This could easily be the Bears division over the next couple seasons.
Definitely.
And now we're on to the Colts, who are actually a really exciting team this year, I think. Their defense has been really solid across the board. Their offense looks bad on paper, but they have been just draining clock and pounding the ball down people's throats. So,
and that indicates, but they did see the Titans woke up, so they're trying to do the Titans. So what the Titans do so well, and they did it against the Titans, and the Titans, wrecked them with it. 28 carries, 204. So it's kind of like the poor man's Titans at this point, is what they're doing. They did pass a little bit more, but 19 to 32 for 133 yards. Rough game against the Titans that would indicate to me you want to figure some things out and quickly if you want to be considered a playoff contender. And I really think it starts with Minshew and getting that part of their game figured out, balancing with their running attack, because that's, what Drummer often has going with his teams is the passing games keeps you just honest enough. And this passing offense, 900 yards, 53%, only a 67 rating. I mean, I wouldn't be scared. I'd be like, okay, beat me with the passing game. I'm just gonna stuff your run. And so if they can get that part of their game figured out, I think they'll be all right. But Mishnew's on a great contract for 3 seasons, so you've got
there
some
was all
time.
this Minshew mania in the offseason. Everybody wanted to land him. There was a big trade, but he's been pretty underwhelming. So hopefully that can get patched up. And they have a bye week, so these little injuries that they have should clear up.
Yeah, and they've played, 3 straight games on the road. That's got to be rough. You got it. They started 3-0, and then they went at Texans, then at Miami, then at Tennessee. So that long on the road of that long of a stretch, you can kind of see, look at the pattern of their games. They win at Houston 31-20, then they play at Miami, lose a close game 27-21, and then they go to Tennessee and get stomped. So I think the bye week and then a home game is really going to be a big refresher for them.
Yeah, and those two losses are two very good teams and very experienced GMs. So it's not, those losses are not necessarily the end of the world.
No, not at all.
And next we have the Rams, who I wasn't really quite sure how I felt about the Rams going into the season. They have a kind of a weird roster of high-powered stars and then no depth. So they're kind of an interesting one. And injuries have already kind of affected them, it looks like, a good bit. So
yeah, so they've lost 2 road games. They lost a division game at Seattle. They lost to your team, Minnesota, but then they have wins against both the Bears and the Packers. So yeah, it's kind of been a weird, interesting season for this team. They're beating good teams and they're losing to other good teams. And, Arizona maybe a little closer than you'd like, considering San Francisco won that game 59-23. But you can't lose those divisional games, and especially not like this. That's Baker Mayfield, who had been struggling this season, who lights him up for 67% passing, 340 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's a problem. Because there are way better quarterbacks than Baker Mayfield that you're going to face. So be interesting to see how they adjust, but they're another squad that will benefit from what they're on a bye too. Yeah, so they get a bye week before they play San Francisco at home, and that's going to be a big divisional game. You don't want to lose 2, especially in a row. So losing to Seattle and then to San Francisco would be rough, but they get that game at home and they get the bye week. So hopefully they can, get things smoothed out before that big divisional game.
Yeah, I really don't know where they're landing. I mean, the Packers have killed some pretty big giants, so it's an interesting that they can beat them and then go lose to the Seahawks the next week. That was a confusing one to me.
Yeah.
All right, so on to the Raiders, who are also a little bit of a surprise. I keep looking for Oakland. I always think Oakland Raiders still. It's so weird to me. I'm too old.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I did that earlier. When I was calling the game, I kept calling them Oakland, and then catching myself Vegas. That's right. They look pretty good. They're on a 3-game streak. All of the games at home. They did beat Baltimore, who's we've got in the Super Bowl contention range. They did beat the Chargers as well, which is the divisional game. They beat Denver. They lost a close game to Pittsburgh at home, lost by 2 scores at Cleveland, and now they've got 2 games on the road coming up. And this one right here, Bengals Vegas, is gonna really give us the barometer of what this team is, in my opinion. That's the Super Bowl contenders. If you get stomped by them, then you really need to rethink some things. But if you keep this game close against the Bengals, then it'll really tell us where the Raiders are going to be come, as we get through the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be heading to Cincinnati right now, and I really wouldn't want to be doing it with the 20th ranked pass defense. So they're going to have to come up big this game and make some strides on the defense to compete with a red hot Bengals team.
We'll see how it goes for sure.
They have some tools on offense, so maybe they can squeak one by here. And now we're onto this competitive section. Or did you have something else you wanted to say about the Raiders?
Well, I'm going to have to take off, actually, unfortunately. But I think that's a good spot since we got through the playoff contenders and everything. But, yeah, I'm going to have to run, unfortunately, as I do have some other commitments today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely look forward to the sim this afternoon and see where some of these games land. I really think we got a lot of tells of the tape. Coming up today, several big games, and look forward to finding out the results. So thanks a lot for having me on, and wish I could stay for the completion, but unfortunately the real life stuff has to get taken care of.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.
You too.
All right. As obviously you can hear, he had to take off, so just do a quick little wrap up here. In this competitive and is the off-season over yet categories that we have from Zach's power rankings. So in my mind, there's a whole lot of teams that could be anywhere on these rankings here and maybe have had a weird season. I think that the Broncos have had a rougher start to the season than what I'd expect, and that really sticks out to me. The Chiefs are just been an unusual roller coaster of a team, putting a big beat down on the Broncos, and then otherwise have just been quiet. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these teams because it's just going to be me sitting here yakking to myself. But maybe if somebody else wants to join me for another podcast, we could take a deeper dive into the bottom half of these power rankings and maybe review some of these big tail of the tape games that Gideon and I have been talking about so far today. But thank you very much for listening to the podcast today, and I hope we all have a great week 6. And I'll see you next time on the P.S.F.L podcast.